Happy Friday. It is the 28th of March as we get ready to close down this month. Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. A little bit late today just because I wanted to move things around for today's featured guest, and it's a man who needs no introduction, Mike Golic. Great to have you, Mike, and you and I had a chance to catch up real briefly in the madness that is Radio Row in New Orleans, right? I just caught you for a minute, and funny how things work out a couple months down the line. Thanks so much for carving out some time today.
Oh, no problem at all. Always good to talk football.
What was New Orleans like? That was my first time there. What an exceptional city.
I love New Orleans as a big event city because, listen, it's all about how it affects us, right? Not the teams. We don't care about the teams. It's how it affects our job for the week. And with New Orleans, you don't need a car. You can basically walk everywhere. Walk to the quarter, walk to get food. You can walk everywhere, walk to the convention center where Radio Row was. So that to me always puts New Orleans up there. Now, at the end of that week, because I stayed all the way till after the game, till Monday, I didn't go to the game. I didn't work the game. I worked the last two Super Bowls for Westwood One. But I got sick on Friday. I know a decent amount of people got sick out there, and I was basically in my hotel room Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it started out great, and it ended up kind of rough. I had a lot of alone time, that's for sure.
Hey, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure you've had plenty of other times, though, spent in New Orleans that you could appreciate and enjoy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was sick for another reason.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, like I'm of the belief that they could have that there every single year.
Agreed.
And it'd be an exceptional host experience. So
absolutely agree.
Anyway, I'm glad our paths crossed rather. And going back to what we discussed right before we went live, you called a handful of games for Westwood One this year in terms of the Ravens' perspective.
Yes.
And what's funny about this offseason is that unlike these other teams that have been, big spenders in free agency or in the trade market or picking at the top of the draft, it's been a very underwhelming in content for the Ravens several months here, aside from DeAndre Hopkins, aside from probably the most important, not sexy, not noteworthy, or certainly noteworthy, but not sexy signing in the extension of Ronnie Stanley. I know you're a Notre Dame guy, so I'm sure you appreciated his career continuing to play out in Baltimore. There hasn't been a whole lot to discuss. So before we get into maybe a few of those topics, what were your observations, just generally speaking, from the handful of games that you did call from the color booth?
Well, I mean, it was kind of a tale of two cities defensively. We know offensively they were running attack with Derrick Henry and with Lamar, and they would complement it with the passing game. We'll see how much DeAndre Hopkins helps that. Zay Flowers obviously led the way. You had your tight ends, I think basically had almost 100 receptions between the two of them and 17 touchdowns. But make no mistake, it's kind of like Philadelphia. It was a running offense with the quarterback and the running back. The defense took on a change. It's amazing when you dive into stats, and I'm never usually one that hangs on a lot of stats, but we know the pass defense statistically ended up very poor, but the defense after week 11, defensive back-wise and back seven-wise played a lot better. And that kind of coincided. The stat is when Kyle Hamilton was playing 5 yards off the ball on average, the defense, and I'm not putting this on Kyle Hamilton, I'm just saying how the defense played, where he played more linebacker depth up on the line depth. They were not that good in the secondary. And then I think it was after week 11, his average depth was 9 yards off the ball. They were played great as far as the pass defense was concerned, but that was certainly their Achilles heel throughout the season. They had 54 sacks they could get to the quarterback, but it was definitely the back seven and the pass defense that struggled the most. So I saw doing games early in the season to late in the season how that part of the team improved.
You know something, a thing or two about a defensive front, and as you just noted too, really with the addition of Chuck Smith the last couple of years as Dr. Rush, outside linebackers coach, not only did they finish second in sacks this past year, but they hit the trifecta the year prior. Yep. For the first time in NFL history, leading the league in points allowed, takeaways, and sacks. And so that's been an area that since T. Sizzle left, they've been looking to find that game wrecker. So they don't have that player, so to speak, but you do have guys that are disruptors in the middle, right? The Nnamdi Madubuikes of the world, the Michael Pierces who just retired. We'll see
Right.
if Travis Jones can come in and fill his shoes like he's expected to. But in terms of the edge rushers, they've been using essentially a philosophy of, hey, let's Band-Aid it. All due respect to Kyle Van Noy because he's had a surgent couple seasons, but he's a Band-Aid, Mike, right? So aside from that, they're continuing to try and take swings in the draft on the Odafe Owehs, the David Ajabos, and while Oweh's coming off a tremendous breakout season, they don't know what they have, right? In Ajabo, Adisa Isaac, a Penn State product. So I think a lot of people in Ravens country are yearning for that game record, which obviously doesn't grow on trees.
No, it doesn't, and that's probably they pick obviously late in the first round on the draft, so that's probably an area where they may try and get a young guy because Kyle Van Noy, I mean, take nothing away from him at all, but he's 34 years old. I mean, he had a monster year, no doubt about it, but he is 34, so you have to find the next one or two edge rushers for your team, someone who's going to be that constant threat off the edge. So that's probably where there's a few edge rushers that are going to go in the first round of this draft. So I would imagine that may be where Baltimore kind of hones in.
And you know how DaCosta and company do things, right? They want to go into every single draft, every single year with as few holes as they can possibly have so they can go best player available. And I thought that's what was represented earlier this week by the Cheeto Awuzie signing.
Yeah.
You've been following his career in recent years. He was banged up last year with Tennessee. Prior to that, he was in Cincy, had a tremendous stint there, and then, of course, was drafted by Dallas. He's going to be, I think, a candidate for CB3 behind Wiggins and Humphrey this year.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's I'm sure where they're penciling him in. Listen, they don't have many holes to fill. You're not that good, and all of a sudden have a lot of holes to fill, but no team is perfect. You have some holes to fill.
Oh, yeah. And that's kind of where we are right now when I was off the top telling you about how slow it's been this offseason, right? Yeah. In terms of news-wise, that's a good problem to have. Now, fans obviously want the big spendings and everything that comes with the recklessness of free agency, but that's just not who the Ravens are.
No, it's not. And quite honestly, when you look at free agency, you have to consider also like Buffalo did a great job. They're all in of re-signing their own. It's not always who you go out and get. It's re-signing your own. They sign, obviously, Josh Allen to the big deal. Shakir, the wide receiver, leading receiver. Bernard, the second leading tackler. Rousseau, the edge rusher. They bring in Joey Bosa and Palmer, the wide receiver from the Chargers. But a lot of times it's who you re-sign. And re-signing, Ronnie Stanley has made a great comeback from injury riddle where he would be in and out of the lineup to having a monster year. And he always said, he would give Baltimore the first crack and maybe even take a little less to stay in Baltimore. So sometimes re-signing your own, like I said, with Buffalo did it a few players, but staying solidified at the left tackle position sometimes is just as important or more important than going out and getting somebody new.
Let's talk more about your Notre Dame guy because Ronnie's just been, and we could talk about one on each side of the ball.
Oh, exactly.
You've already mentioned one of them. We'll get to 14 in just a bit, But for Ronnie, to your point, in his press conference a few weeks ago, after the first time he spoke after the extension, I mean, he made it clear there's a loyalty thing here in Baltimore, and not only does he feel like there's unfinished business, but I think he has a true appreciation that they drafted him. Now, would he have went top 10 regardless? I would think so. Back in 2016, he's been around for a long time. But I'd be curious your thoughts. I'm sure you're someone that's followed his career here. This is a player that has rebuilt himself in a lot of ways. And when you are over 300 pounds and the stature that somebody like him brings and has and just walks with on a daily basis, when you have that kind of significant ankle injury, I mean, you could talk about it from your injury history too. Just the fact that he is now back and anchored down and here for the future, for foreseeable future, 3 years, significant for the protection of their franchise quarterback.
I was fortunate in my 9 years. I had 10 shoulder surgeries and just one knee surgery. So it was mostly upper body, which still affects you. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But when you're a big guy, as a former D tackle, I was about a 300 pounder, and Ronnie over 300 pounds. Lower body injuries, really on anybody, it affects the position. But when you're carrying that weight, lower body injury can be tough because you have to let that heal even before you can start cardio back up and everything. And like I said, Ronnie is while he's playing great, he's 31. He's going into, I think, his 10th year.
Yeah.
So he's certainly more on the backside than the front side of his career. But it was a position where you thought maybe they would have to make a change given his injury history. But boy, he came back strong. So kudos to him. And it's something that you can never predict. You can make all the prognostications you want before a season starts, but then you have a year where it turns into San Francisco, where you're a mash unit, where just you have injury after injury, where it's not an excuse, it's a reason. It's a reason you don't do well. And it may have been the reason that it may have been the end for Ronnie is the lower body injuries that he had and recurring injuries that he had. But again, kudos to him, the training staff, for working his ass off to get back on the field. And certainly there's a little luck involved, because especially with an old lineman, a lot of times you're blocking and you don't, it's either friendly fire or a running back or a D lineman from the other side of the ball coming over and taking a swipe at the quarterback and rolling into your legs. You don't even know it's coming, and all of a sudden you're down. So kudos to him again at 31, working himself back into the shape that he did to have the year that he did and getting paid.
As you've watched too, being an offensive lineman within the confines of a Lamar Jackson scheme isn't exactly a standard.
No, I mean, listen, offensive linemen love to cup protect, where you just block a guy that's in front of you. You know where your quarterback is in the pocket, but a lot of times a sack isn't your fault. The quarterback escapes out, and all of a sudden the D lineman releases because the D lineman sees the quarterback. The O lineman's back's to him. They don't see the quarterback. So all of a sudden they're blocking a guy great, and the guy just peels off and sacks a scrambling quarterback. You're like, what the hell? That counts against me.
Right. And from the fans' vantage point at home versus what you've been lucky to do right here in this next leg of your career as an analyst in the booth, the vantage point you have and we have from the press box, I mean, it's second to none. It gives a completely different look at what it is that Lamar does on a play-by-play basis. The play is never over.
And quite honestly, it reminds me. Listen, there have been running quarterbacks in the league forever. You can go back to Fran Tarkington, who was a running quarterback. But when you're talking about great athletes who are dangerous runners, hell, I had one in Philly, and Randall Cunningham. I mean, that dude was an absolute terror. Now, he didn't have as many designed runs as the quarterbacks do today, but when he got out of the pocket, man, I mean, as a defense, do you come up and play him? Do you stay back? Is he going to pass? If he runs, he could take it to the house just like Lamar can anytime he runs. So there are defensive guys in my era that had to deal with Randall Cunningham. And one of the biggest differences I've seen over the game over the last few years is, remember when Lamar was coming out, play him at wide receiver, a couple of guys were saying that, a couple of former GMs were saying that. But what the NFL has kind of morphed to, which is a positive, is when you get an athletic quarterback. Listen, the basis for a quarterback is still passing from the pocket. Everything else is gravy. So when a quarterback that could move and was athletic would come from college to the pros would say, forget what you did in college, you're going to be a pocket passer. You know what? And not take advantage of their abilities. But that's changed over the years. Now, you'd be foolish not to take advantage of athletic quarterbacks' abilities to have design runs where you have an extra blocker as a back, to half rolls, to full to full rolls, to scrambling for danger and putting a linebacker or a safety on an island when you break the pocket of, again, what do? Do I stay in coverage? Do I come up? So I think the NFL, the teams have done a great job of using the talent that the quarterbacks had in college and transferring it to the pros and not muting them.
And you mentioned, the Randall Cunningham era. Now it makes you think, you fast forward what Lamar's doing, what those that came before him have done for him. Now he's doing for a Jalen Milroe, for example, maybe this year, right? That could be an example of somebody that, Lamar walked, and those that were before Lamar walked so that he could run, and that Jalen Hurts and everybody else who's come after Lamar can run. And you're not hearing any of that talk right now about a Jalen Milroe in terms of the positional opinions, right, that were cast onto Lamar coming out of Louisville, which is refreshing.
It all is a chess game. It's who can keep who on their heels. And when you have a quarterback that, again, can either have a designed run where you have an extra blocker, you can have a half roll, you can have a full roll, or you can have a scramble, that all of a sudden keeps the defense on their heels. Does the defense spy? I think a spy is a waste of time, because if you have a really athletic quarterback, they're going to beat a linebacker in a one-on-one open field situation. Sometimes spying works, and I think most of the time it doesn't, because like I said, in an open field one-on-one situation, an athletic quarterback is normally going to win that. So you get a quarterback with the different options. It used to be, they used to be a pocket passer, but we progressed to quarterbacks on the move, or quarterback scrambler, or quarterbacks running. And that now, as I just talked about before, puts the defense on their heels. What do I do? Is this a quarterback run? Is he half rolling? Is he going to run? How does he pressure the defense? The closer he gets to the line, it forces the defense to make a decision that could favor the offense.
It's really impressed me, and I'm curious if you have any plays that come to mind. And obviously don't feel like you need to mention the plays themselves, but from the games that you called this year, the off-platform stuff for Lamar, the throwing angles that he takes, it's very Mahomes-esque.
Yeah.
There's a craftiness to it, but there's also this improv nature to it as well. And man, when things break down, is he more dangerous in those moments? I mean, it's
well that, and again, that puts pressure on the defensive line, because defensive line, they have pass rush lanes. You don't just willy-nilly rush wherever you want, because that leaves open holes, whether it's outside or inside. But better pass rushers will try different moves, and sometimes they'll take an inside move on an offensive tackle, an edge rusher will, which will open up the outside. Sometimes a D tackle will get pushed too wide, and the quarterback can step up and give the quarterback, an up and out go. So, yeah, I mean, his off-platform stuff, that's why, I mean, great defense is and it depends on the maturity of the defense, can play reckless in a contained defense. But when you have a quarterback who is as dangerous as Lamar, you have to be more careful. Like when they were playing Pittsburgh in the playoffs, I was kind of stunned at how Pittsburgh played Lamar on design runs. Lamar would fake it to Derrick, and he'd run wide, and you always had TJ Watt crashing down, to try and take the running back, and the linebacker was responsible for coming over the top. The inside linebacker was responsible for coming over the top to get to the edge. But that's an easier block for the offensive line, to wall off that inside linebacker while the edge guy and TJ is just flying down the line. I mean, how many times did Lamar just have a free rush? I just thought that was a bad game plan in how they played him. But that you have to kind of pick your poison. Now, again, Derrick Henry is a threat. So they're trying to get TJ and his athletic ability to catch Derrick before he gets to the line of scrimmage and can start bowling people over. So they picked their poison, and it didn't work.
It was so shocking too, because they had so much success, to your point, with Watt. Hey, they want make Lamar beat us laterally. If we get him moving laterally, and we have gap integrity and everything that goes on with the game within the game, because Watt is such a freaking superstar. I was shocked that happened in the wild card round. They ran all over them. Yep. Silly. How much do you think Derrick's got left in the tank?
Listen, he is putting the magic number of 30 to bed, isn't he? I mean, listen, you just look at him. The dude keeps himself in incredible shape. I did an appearance with him when he was at Tennessee, when Tennessee had when Nashville had the draft. And he walked into the room, and I'm 6'5". I'm damn near looking eye to eye with him. And he's built like, I mean, it's just, he's a freaking pads. So, I mean, he takes care of his body. These guys take care of their bodies way better than we did back in the day in the off season. So who's to say? I mean, Saquon Barkley is getting closer to 30. He goes for 2,000 yards. Now they have a great offensive line and a great scheme. So I think it helped. I don't know. We just saw Saquon make the most average per year, 20 million, when last year, what we were talking about was the running backs not getting paid. hopefully that will start. I think Bijan Robinson from Atlanta will be the next young running back who will surpass 20 million a year.
What do you think? You just made one comment about your offseason structure when you were a player. How do you think, based on the relationships and the experiences that you've had covering this league, how do the two compare from your era?
Well, I mean, when I first got in the league, you just kind of lifted for your whole body, biceps, triceps, back, chest, legs, everything. But after my career, maybe coming to the end of my career, supplements started coming into play in the 90s. And I don't mean steroids. Those were when I started out. They were there. But supplements came in. Eating, not only eating well, but timely eating. All these guys getting chefs that cook food for them. Now working out specific to your position. If I was in a league now as a D lineman, I would be doing workouts for a D lineman, not kind of everything. Sure. It's just, and listen, it's natural. It's come a long way. Hell, when I was a kid, you didn't wear seatbelts in a car, and you learned to wear seatbelts in a car. When I was a kid, you didn't wear a helmet riding a bike. Now kids wear helmets riding a bike. You learn along. It's like they're learning about concussions. You learn and you grow, and the technology and the training has just gotten better, and these guys just do a great job taking care of their bodies.
The biggest thing, and I don't know if you remember these headlines from several years ago, but the Ravens parted ways with their strength and conditioning coach after just a litany of injuries and soft tissue stuff.
Soft tissue, yeah.
Yeah, and the non-contact, though, I'll never forget it. I think it was the summer of 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters go down on back-to-back non-contact plays with soft tissue stuff. And it's just like, why? Now, I have no idea how you can measure and go back to the strength right for blame. I don't know how you assess blame, but clearly they needed to make a change, and they did.
I think, listen, I can't either. I'm not a strength coach, but it certainly speaks more to that than blowing out your knee or hurting, damaging a ligament, hurting your knee in a non-contact. You hurt your calf, your quad, your hammy, a soft tissue injury. You start looking at ways you're training without a doubt. And because those things, my son, when we do a show together, always laughs at me because I always talk about guys that are holding out and missing camp, that if they're not getting the hits in, they're susceptible to the soft tissue injuries. And soft tissue injuries can linger because you feel good enough to come back and then you re-injure it and then you're out for a few more weeks. Those can be damning, especially in the beginning of the season.
No question. And from those that I know, a couple players that were there for the pre those changes, those strength and conditioning changes, and then post, the biggest thing that I've heard is the new regiments directly reflect our recent injury history. There's a specialized, what do they call it? I guess it is like a regiment, right? It's each player has his own specialized structure for whether it's off-season training or in-season training, and it's specifically designed to not only their position group,
right,
which is maybe what you were alluding to a little bit earlier on, right? Instead of going full body, no, we're going heavy upper body or whatever it is. So anyway, that was just something that was
no, that's true, and I think a big part of it, quite honestly, is stretching during, stretching after. And certainly the type of workout you do, working your core, your obliques. I mean, core is such a huge thing now. When I was training, you did sit-ups last, and a lot of times you were like too damn tired and you didn't do sit-ups. Now it's incorporated from the beginning of the workout to the end of the workout to strengthen the core and the abs.
Right. Pre-show, I told you 20 minutes. We've gone 25. Are you okay for a few more? Okay.
Sure.
Because I haven't had a chance to ask you about the other Notre Dame guy who's literal. I mean, Zach Orr, at one of his first press conferences last year, with a straight face, said, we think he's a legitimate DPOY candidate moving forward.
Yeah.
And he's shown, you go look at the alignment, the alignment statistics and the way that they used Kyle last year he's a unicorn. Unicorn's putting it lightly. And so I guess, how have you viewed Kyle's just firepower start to his career?
Well, I mean, coming off his rookie year, he was kind of out of position, and it was like, they were like, well, okay, what do we have here? And once they figured out what they have there as a safety at 6'4", 2.25. I mean, you go back to my era for Cincinnati, there was a monster safety, a David Fulcher, who was 6'3", like 240, and was playing safety. I mean, it was crazy how hard he would come up and hit. But the safeties of the day, you go back to when Derwin James got into the league, right? I mean, of how versatile that's become the new versatile position. You play safety, you play linebacker depth, and you play on the line. And he also has the size to ward off blockers, and he has the speed to outrun blockers. He is a unicorn to be at that size, and that the smarts that he has for the game, which can make you seem faster or quicker than you are by knowledge of game plan. I mean, that can't be understated. Of kind of, I mean, that's what you do with a game plan when it's 2nd and 7+, 2nd and 4 to 6, 2nd and 3 or less. All the different scenarios, there are packages of plays that teams like. And the more you know, okay, it's this down and distance, here's their formation, here are some of the things they run. The more you can get yourself the depth to knowing that, the even quicker and faster you're going to look. And he's done all that. I mean, he's become a true leader on that defense. And when you can have one guy, it's kind of like talking about, Travis Hunter going into the league. You can play him at cornerback. You can play him at wide receiver. You can take care of two positions. Well, with Kyle, I mean, you put him on a line, you put him at linebacker. A lot of times you're coming up, he's unaccounted for, and he's not missing many one-on-one tackles with his size, and he's playing on the other side of the line when he's close to the line. It is something to watch a guy that big with that kind of size move the way he does.
Well, with all that in mind, it's selfishly when he went back to playing, traditional safety when they made a bunch of changes last year that you alluded to earlier on in the show, selfishly, you're kind of like, oh, I love when he's up at the line because he's got that range to him. His father, Derrick, played professional basketball overseas, and I'll never forget it. I had Derrick on not long after the 22 draft just to talk about his son and whatnot. And Derrick, he's got this competitive spirit to him, no nonsense guy. And he gets up there again, straight face, and looks me right in the eye through the camera and says, "My son's got a blend of the following players." And he listed it off. And, it's Derwin James, Sean Taylor. I think he even threw Ed Reed in there just for the Baltimore perspective. And I'm sitting there trying not to be sarcastic or smart with my response. 3 years later, it's aging pretty well.
Really is. I mean, he is a combination because he can do, I mean, what a tool to have in your tool belt for Zach Orr, right? I mean, to be able to play Kyle anywhere on the field is such a plus.
And year 4, now he's extension eligible. He and Tyler Linderbaum came in together both in 2022 first round. I would not be surprised if Kyle is at the top of DaCosta's list when it comes to extensions. He's going to be deserving of it.
You don't draft guys like that to not, especially when they're young. He's 24, going to be 25. I mean, you don't draft guys like that who become not just Pro Bowlers, but all pro players just to say, it's going to cost us too much, especially the positions Baltimore in when they're trying to get over the Buffalo Bill and Kansas City Chief hump. That's not where you start to cut fat because Kyle Hamilton is meat. He's not fat. I mean, you pay that guy what you need to pay him.
Hey, before we get you out of here, rest of the division, as you stand right now in late March, Burrow and Lamar obviously are going to be the starters in Cincy and Baltimore, and we know that. Cleveland and Pittsburgh, who you think is going to be their QB1s in a few months from now?
Well, I mean, in Pittsburgh, it's if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign with them, it's going to be Mason Rudolph again. Now, that's probably even if they draft a quarterback, they pick 21st. Is going to be Jackson Dart if he lasts that long. I doubt they would trade up and give up assets to pick up it's not a quarterback heavy draft. So, and there's really no, outside of Aaron Rodgers, there's Carson Wentz, there's Kirk Cousins you could trade for, which I don't think they have any intention of doing. So maybe they live with Mason Rudolph. I mean, Arthur Smith likes to run a running offense anyway, but you have another weapon in DK Metcalf. I mean, listen, Cincinnati just has all kinds of firepower, leading passer, leading receiver, leading sacker, who now they may re-sign to Trey Hendrickson, but their defense is awful. I mean, just they had the top quarterback, top receiver, and top sacker, and they didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
So they have some holes to fill. Cleveland's still a bit of a mess. I mean, they still in their Deshaun Watson, cap hell at the quarterback position, bring in Kenny Pickett, and they'll probably draft Abdul Carter to put on the edge outside of Myles Garrett, and again deal with, maybe pick a quarterback later in the draft or deal with a quarterback later. So the division, I mean, really, it should be Baltimore's again for sure.
Yeah, you would think. By the way, if Cleveland goes Carter, I think the consensus across the board is Tennessee's going to go Ward.
Yeah.
Then Shador might slip a little bit.
Well, here's the thing: if the Giants, who have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, as I've always said, it all depends on the grade of the quarterback. If you grade the quarterback, and now it can be a little bit of a reach for quarterback because they're always overvalued. But if you value Shador Sanders, if the Giants say they value him as a franchise, he's our guy for 10-year quarterback, you take him. No questions asked. If you're not sure, then that's a pretty big risk to take him there, especially when a Travis Hunter will probably be available. Again, can help with two needs. Can help as a cornerback and help as a wide receiver. If it goes to top 3 picks, Tennessee, Cleveland, and the Giants, and Shador isn't taken, you go down the list. Only at 9, where Derek Carr, basically by elimination, has to be the quarterback for this year, do they take Shador to be the future quarterback? After that, it's all the way to 21 and Pittsburgh. All the other teams, after 3, outside of New Orleans at 9 and Pittsburgh at 21, all have quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So we talk about a player slipping every year. If Shador doesn't go 3, it will be interesting where he ends up.
Might end up with Lamar and his mother meme, right, from the 2018 night where he's waiting all night and he's sleeping on the table.
Oh, yeah.
Goodness
there's
gracious.
Always somebody that falls into that trap.
Right, that made the visit, right? To it's in Green Bay this year, right? Made the visit. Do you weigh it? Oh man! So their setup, by the way, on Radio Row was awesome. I don't know if you had a chance to go down there and check out the NFL draft setup. It was on the opposite side of where DraftKings were, where you were setting up.
Oh no, I didn't see it, but I mean, listen, the NFL almost can't do anything wrong, and barnstorming the draft is one of the great things. I mean, because you get hundreds of thousands of fans to different cities. It's a fantastic move by the league.
Heck yeah. I kept you for over 30 minutes. I really appreciate it. Let everybody know what you got going on, if you can, or anything you want to plug, Mike, on your way out.
Mike and I just finished our stint with DraftKings. DraftKings didn't want to do any more in-house produced shows. So all the in-house produced shows are done. But like I said, we probably have 3 or 4 entities that we are looking to have our pick of who to sign with. So there'll be news out there soon.
And should we expect, though, to keep hearing you from time to time in the booth? Will you?
Oh yeah, Westwood one. I'll probably be doing all the Sunday night games again, and then the playoff games as well. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. I love this 2nd, 3rd, 4th career of yours. It's awesome. So I appreciate the time, Mike, and have a great rest of your off season. Hope you do it again.
Appreciate it.
All right. Mike Golic, everybody, kind enough to spend some time with me here on this Friday. We ended up kind of catching up for a few minutes just by happenstance in New Orleans on Radio Row, and he was doing a show there, and just really appreciated his perspective, obviously, as a former player and as somebody that just has, obviously, all the unique insights in the world. And seriously, though, he's had 4 or 5 careers. I mean, think about it. Football player, Mike and Mike, legendary on ESPN, game analyst. Now he's doing stuff with his son, Mike Jr. I mean, that was awesome. I hope you guys appreciated that as much as I did. A couple super chats here, and obviously, as you can see by the shoes over my left shoulder, I am not in Baltimore right now. I'm in Dabine. Little wedding tonight in Gloucester. Am I pronouncing it right? Gloucester. Looking forward to that, a Loyola wedding. I know some of you have reached out to me, for those of you that are subscribers in the Massachusetts area. I don't have a ton of free time this weekend. It's tight as is. Plus, I'm trying to find my wife, so there's just not a lot of time to get together for a drink. But we will be out and about in Southie tomorrow night, so maybe you guys can track us down. Tinsay writes, the offense has always failed us. Turnovers and poor coaching. That was from earlier on in the show. Appreciate the super chat, Tinsay. C King writes, why didn't we give it to Derrick for the 2-point conversion? That we may never know, C King. Appreciate you. All 600 plus of you hanging out on this Friday. Annual owners meeting down in Florida is coming up next week. I got denied credential access by the NFL. What a shocker. I know they love me. So I will not be down there, but Sarah will be back coming up on Monday. By the way, sorry for being 30 minutes late. Quite honestly, it is such a slow time right now when it comes to content that they're just, I'm not going to get on here and milk it or just go guest call after guest call. I'm just not going to do that. So I'm looking forward to getting Sarah back in. Obviously, it's a different show when there's two people, and Mike could do 12:30. So that's just kind of how it went. I appreciate him and his time, and I appreciate you guys for being with me today. Get to some patrons here, Chris Gagnon and Christopher Saxey. Thank you both for believing in what we're building. This is your monthly shout out because of the support that you give us through Patreon. And we really appreciate you guys for being integral members of the community. Go to patreon.com/RavensVault podcast if you're interested in getting involved in that side of things. What else did I have? Let's see if anything's broken since I went live. Do a quick little refresh here on the timeline. Not seeing much, although I am seeing that Maryland's pro day was this morning. Maryland football's pro day, and I believe Zay Flowers was in the house. So good to see Zay up from where he spends the majority of his offseason, which is down in South Florida. Sarah, of course, is finishing up her spring break, her family's spring break down in Fort Lauderdale, and she'll be back with me on Monday. And then I look forward to literally right now, a week from right now, Sarah and I will be doing a live show together from her home in Columbus, which should be hilarious. So can't wait to meet the entire Ellison family and hope that their spring break is finishing up nicely here. So appreciate you guys. Hope you have an awesome weekend. I see it's like freaking 80 degrees or high 70s in Baltimore right now. And I willingly left that for Boston. You bet I did. Hinge is working right now. We had a good time last night. We were hanging out in Southie, hanging out with my high school buds. And again, going to go to this wedding tonight. Literally, actually, like probably in an hour I need to leave. It's a 4:00 ceremony, followed by the reception and everything. And then be flying back on Sunday. Sorry to those of you Terps fans. Didn't get the end result that you were looking for last night. Florida smacked them in the second half. Oof. I mean, what was up with the rebounding? Maryland just couldn't control the glass whatsoever. But hey, a really successful season. Have no idea where Maryland basketball is headed. Sure seems like Kevin Willard's heading for Philly. Probably going to be the next head coach of the Villanova Wildcats here in the next couple of days, I would think. Unless Maryland comes up with an offer that he can't refuse. But Florida overwhelmed them with there's just an overabundance of talent and explosiveness with that offense. But a solid start to the season for the Orioles, that's for sure. Hanging 12 on the Blue Jays. O'Neal, something else with these leadoff homers. 6 in a row. He'll be a nice piece for them. No chance they're winning that division, though. I just don't. They did last year, but just with that starting rotation, I just don't have a lot of confidence that that's sustainable in the AL East. Murderer's row. Now, you get Bradish back at some point late summer. You get Grayson back at some point in the next month. I'm just ballparking the timelines. Then maybe if they can hang around, then they can make a run. I just don't have a whole lot of confidence in that. The payrolls, it's tough. It's just tough. That's tough living with that payroll. All right, guys. Have an awesome weekend. I'll be back in action on Monday, if not before. See if something breaks. But again, owners meeting will be the big to-do next week. All the owners will be descending onto the breakers. What's that? West Palm Beach, I believe. So we'll be following that closely. On your way out, if you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when we're dropping our daily live content. Again, apologies for being 30 minutes tardy today. That's just kind of how it goes this time of year. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for an awesome week. I'll catch up with you on Monday. And as always, thanks for spending some time with us here inside the vault. And if you could, on the way out, this would mean a lot to me. If you could tweet at Mike, it'd be awesome if you could just tweet at Mike Golic, and I'll pull up his account real quick because this goes a long way in just him being like, oh, okay, I got some mentions from that. That was cool. Maybe I'll go back on with Bobby and Sarah the next time, next time I get a chance. Here it is. It's literally just at Golic on X. Golic. Quick little thanks. If you have a minute, we would really appreciate that. Again, these guys do this out of the generosity of their own time, generosity of their own heart. So that was awesome. I never had a chance to catch up with him in this type of format. And I literally just walked right up to him in New Orleans, and that's how it went. So I'd appreciate that, guys. All right. Have a great rest of your days. We'll catch up soon. And as always, thanks for spending some time with us here inside the vault. Sarah will be back on Monday. Looking forward to it. Talk to you guys soon.